Hello coders, and welcome to another How to Code Well discussion. Today we're going to be talking all about web development and management. Today we have Jeremy Onion here, and he is the technical director at the Torpedo Group. Hi Jeremy, how's it going?
Hi, it's going well. Thanks a lot.
So me and Jeremy actually have a bit of a past because we actually worked together at FastHost for a good few years. But Jeremy has actually done a lot of stuff in web development, and he's now obviously the technical director. So Jeremy, if you could just talk about how you started becoming a web developer, and then we can get to that technical director a bit in just a second.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So my introduction to web development goes way back before we met.
Right.
So I started my career in, we're going back to 94. So
Wow.
back when Amazon was just starting,
Right.
as it happens. And I was working for a mail order firm back then. So obviously mail order, e-commerce, it was a natural fit.
Yeah.
So we started, at the time we were starting to investigate it, we used a product called Actinic Catalog,
Right.
which probably doesn't exist anymore. And then I kind of moved out of there a bit into more software implementation management, so project management, that sort of thing.
Right.
Then came back into, so still doing mail order software. And then a couple of years later, probably about 98, moved back to a mail order company.
Wow.
As an IT manager, ironically enough.
Right.
Just
Oh, gosh.
more, I say IT manager, it was actually more of a systems administration type gig.
Uh-huh.
But the web developer we had there left. So
Right.
I kind of picked up the reins on that a bit as well.
Yeah.
And it kind of progressed from there. I'd been developing code since I was about 12. I used to have a ZX81, VIC-20. Similar story to most developers. Started off as a kid doing hobby type stuff, and then kind of gravitated into it. And being in mail order pretty much my entire career, it was kind of a natural progression.
And was that mainly PHP language?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. So initially, back when I was working for the first company I worked for, PHP wasn't really a thing back then, and JavaScript was just kind of taking off.
Right.
Literally just, so there was the two competing standards of JavaScript and JScript. I don't know if you remember those yourself.
Yeah. Proper old school.
Yes. And then we had the browser wars with Netscape and IE. So that was that. But when I'd moved to the second role where I started doing it a lot more seriously, it was actually a company called Natural Collection over in Bath.
Right.
So I was then
So this is Bath in UK, yeah.
Yeah. Bath is in just down the road from here. So
yeah. Excellent.
That was when I started to utilize PHP a lot more, and it's kind of gone from there, really.
God, wow, that's such a story. And so you actually were a manager before being a manager. It's such an awesome story.
Yeah, well, it was kind of they were managerial roles in title only. So, for example, when I was the project manager, I was managing projects, so there was no man management or anything like that. But
Right.
I was the person that was making sure that the projects got implemented on time and all that sort of stuff. And likewise with the IT managerial role, that was just managing the IT systems, not actually managing people.
Right.
Similar thing. So you're sort of like, it's still problem solving and all the rest of it. And that's been the main, probably the main feature of my career since the very beginning. A lot of it is based around problem solving. And again, as a developer, it's a natural thing you enjoy doing.
Yeah, definitely. And so how did you actually first get into web development? What was the thing that made you think, this is the career for me, sort of after education and that kind of stuff?
So I don't think there was ever a conscious decision to get into web development.
Right.
When I was working at Miramel, which was the first company I worked for, and we were doing, that was the initial mail order company.
Yeah.
And remember, this is right back, like I said, it was when Amazon was just beginning and all the rest of it.
Wow.
It was a new, interesting field that anybody in mail order was having to, really should look to get into.
Yeah.
We were selling office supplies, so it was ideal for mail order because everything was boxed rigidly, easy to pack. So literally sticker on, out the door.
Right.
So that, it was kind of, investigating that, and then through the software house I was working for, again, it was mail order. So e-commerce was a natural fit. So again, doing that, and I'd always enjoyed coding as when I was a young person anyway, and there on my Vic 20 and what have you. So, it seemed like a natural way to go. So it wasn't like I'd been looking around thinking, no, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
I know how to do that. Yeah. It was literally just kind of really organic. It's sort of like, you know what? I really know this industry. I love this type of work. I love development. Let's go in that direction.
Nice. That's really, really good. So how did you jump from that position to FastHost? Where did you see that transition go? How did that happen?
There's a lot that happened in between those points. Right. I'd worked. I'd done my time at URML. I'd done the software implementation job. Mm-hmm. I was back IT manager, and then kind of slipped into a web development role. So I'd gone through another company as well, an extreme sports company.
Right. Wow.
And then I'd kind of reached a bit of a crossroads in my life.
Right.
So various things happened in my personal life, and I really needed a kind of a sabbatical. Uh-huh. So I kind of went in a completely different direction for a bit. I moved to Germany, of all places, and I ended up working for a logistics company, of all things.
Wow.
Booking transportation for a company that were doing parts from Eastern Europe, so Poland, Eastern Germany, and various places like that. Mm-hmm. To Birmingham for the BMW Mini. They make it the plant there.
Right.
So I did that for just under a year. Right. I think it was. I'd also met my fiance while I was out there as well. Actually, in fairness, I'd met her before that, and that's kind of why I'd gone to that part of Germany. Mm-hmm. Then we were looking to come back to the UK.
Yeah.
Initially I took a job in Cheltenham for a financial services company.
Right.
And then we moved back then. Now this would have been about 2009, 2010, around about. And I came back, I was working there for a year as a senior PHP developer. And the financial services crash happened. Yeah. So that gives you an idea of the timescale, and it was kind of a bit first in, first out. So, last in, first out. Mm-hmm, so I was made redundant. Mm-hmm. We were based in Cheltenham at the time, so looking for another developer role. And through a recruiter, I got put forward for a position at FastHost.
Right.
And there, literally a couple of weeks after you did.
Yeah. That was good. Good times. Good times.
Yeah, it was fantastic. One of the brilliant things about working there, I'm not sure how your career had been to that point, but I'd either always been working as a one-man team, kind of leading, as someone who, because I've got a massive interest in development anyway, not just web development, just general development in general. I love developing. Well, I love problem solving, and development is a good pure form of that.
It is, yeah.
And so I either found myself, teaching other people or working on my own. And joining FastHost, I was suddenly thrown into a team atmosphere with some phenomenal developers.
Oh yeah.
The team we had there was, they were really, really, right on it. I learned so much from that.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. I'd got in thinking, I know web development. I can do all this.
Yeah.
So wow. I really don't know as much as I thought.
It was proper A-team stuff. It was really good stuff.
Yeah.
And like you said, the team at FastHost are amazing programmers. Not only the programmers, but also the people who are supporting the DevOps type stuff as well. I mean, they knew their stuff like the back of their hand.
Well, they certainly did.
And you just absorbed all that knowledge like a sponge.
Yes, definitely. Not according to the register. We had a few run-ins with that IT site, but other than that, they were incredibly good, talented crowd. So and I learned so much from my time there.
Definitely. So we were basically there for like was it 2 years or something like that?
I was there for 4 years in total.
4 years in total. So okay,
yeah,
I must have left like halfway in from your.
Yeah, halfway through my tenure there.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So, gosh. So, what happened after that then? Where did you? What made? First of all, what made you choose to jump to something else? And also, sort of, where was your skill level at that point? In terms of both web development and as you said in the management sort of side. Because there must have been a point where there's like a fork in the road, I think, between whether you're a programmer or whether you manage programmers.
Yeah.
So talk us up to that point.
Okay, so that comes a little bit later in the story.
Okay.
So we were so at this point, I'm at Fasthost, thoroughly enjoying it. You know, as you know, fantastic place to work, fantastic people to work with. But I'm in the UK. I'm missing Germany.
Yeah.
My fiance is missing Germany. So we were looking to move back. And I've got to be honest. I think 3 to 4 years on a company is with a company is not a bad thing. I mean, to be fair, hadn't it been missing Germany, I'd probably still be at Fasthost because it was a fantastic place to work. And it's the sort of place you can stay at and still be growing as a developer and still be doing interesting stuff and developing new stuff. But we decided we really wanted to get back to Germany, so started looking around for positions and ended up with a position in Munich, of all places.
Right.
Now, one of the fantastic things about Munich is that it's a very international city in terms of Germany, and it's one of the hotspots for development roles as well.
Okay.
So ever fancy working abroad, Munich is a fantastic place to look because the majority of the companies there are international. So they tend to use business English as their internal language. So everybody there speaks English to a very good level.
Right.
I'm not saying you should ever go and live in a foreign country and not learn the language. I do know some German, enough to get by definitely. And I was doing a German course both beforehand and while I was there. Yeah. So I'm not too bad with the old German. But as a way in, it's fantastic. So if you don't want to do it, mind, get in there before March the 29th. Otherwise, you'll so easily.
Oh, let's not make this political.
I will do my best. So I took a job out there with a company called Hive as a senior developer, and we were basically working on an innovation platform.
Right.
So the company Hive themselves, they are a company that will go into businesses and help them to innovate and get ideas from their employees as to how they can improve the company, things like that. The system we were working on was a platform almost like Facebook, but for generating ideas and that. So you could put ideas in, people could comment on it and like it and all that sort of stuff. And we were working with companies like Fujitsu, Daimler-Benz, BMW, so some really big blue chip companies. And I absolutely loved the work, but part of the problem there was that good product, nice companies to work for, but this product was kind of an add-on to their main business, which was selling the consultancy into these companies and helping them run these ideation programs and things like that.
Okay.
Had lots of other facets to the business as well. So they got products that they were designing themselves. They do industrial design. They do a whole load of stuff. And this was just a very small section of that.
Right.
So I started to feel quite constrained in terms of, there was a ceiling above me that I couldn't go through. I didn't feel that we were getting the support within the team that maybe we could have done with. Not because the management weren't on board with doing that, but just because business priorities were that, we were only a small part of the entire company. Okay. I don't want to make it sound like Hive were, not doing justice to their developers. That certainly wasn't the case at all. But, I had these conversations with them at the time. So I was looking for something else at the time, and still within Munich, ended up working for a part of a company called ePay.
Right. Right.
So, and this was they're listed on the Nasdaq. They're a large multinational.
Nice.
They have a head office there in Germany, and they do payment system integration and ATMs, foreign exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few to do with electronic transactions of money. So if you know these little item cards and things like that, you get at the checkout in Sainsbury's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other supermarkets are available. Then what we used to do is we used to do the fulfillment for the cards.
Right.
So we could get them printed for you. We would do the integration into the EPOS system so that you could validate them through the EPOS.
Yeah.
We would do the integration into the back-end system, so iTunes or Google Play or Steam or whichever platform it is, and basically run that whole thing end-to-end. So basically, we could rock up to someone like Steam and say, "How would you like to sell vouchers within, Sainsbury's or whichever supermarket happened to be?" And then we would do end to end from putting the cards out into the store to actually being validated and being used on their platform.
Wow.
So that was a very interesting. And ironically enough, I got that. One of the main reasons I got that role was because of Fasthouse, because they were using Zen framework.
Ah, okay, I see. Yeah, that good old thing.
So I was able to draw on some of that experience.
Yeah.
And it was actually while I was there working as a developer, we had another team that were working on a prepaid credit card system. It's a multi-currency one, and they were struggling a bit. Initially, it was just one junior developer. Then they had two junior developers working on it. But these two poor guys, well, a guy and a girl, were sat on their own, trying to get this project up and running and working and what have you. And so I was asked by my boss, could I, help them out a bit?
Right.
Now, I think they were expecting me to just go and do a couple of code reviews, just see what was going on and what have you. As it was, I got in there, started working with them, and realised that the developers themselves, there was no problem with that at all. They were good. They were juniors, but they were really good, talented developers, and they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Problem was the lack of organisation.
Okay.
So they were having loads of requests fired at them left, right, and centre. And being juniors, they were just trying to respond to everything.
Right. Okay. So like, almost like juggling fire in the sense of like no triage or priorities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I like the way I like to say it. They were trying to firefight with a super soaker full of petroleum.
Oh God.
It just wasn't working.
No.
So rather than having to get involved in doing any of the coding and what have you, my first thing I did there was to actually implement a Kanban board.
Okay.
So, so for anybody who doesn't know what a Kanban board, it's an agile way of organizing software project. Well, any project really. Software is a particular use case for it, where you have columns, a set of columns. So it might be as simple as to do, doing, done.
Right. Yep.
And then you have your tasks in those columns, and then everything goes in the to-do column, and you just order them highest priority to lowest priority. But the key workflow that you use with that is you only ever work on one or two items,
right?
And you are not allowed to touch anything else until that item has gone from to-do across to done.
It's very black and white.
So it is that simple, but it's very effective, particularly when you're trying to firefight like they were. Because you can't work on 5 different things, particularly on the same code base.
Yeah.
Your merge requests get very messy. You start to trip over yourself. You'll implement something halfway, start to rely on that, and then realize that you've gone down a rabbit hole and you need to re-implement it. It's not a good way to work at all.
No, and that's the beauty of agile, because it allows you to, well, if you do it correctly, it allows you to have more of a oversight as to the scale of the issues that you have to deal with, the size of the problem, because a lot of developers are in that position who are juggling all sorts of things at once. They don't appreciate the actual scale of everything coming through, and decisions get made that perhaps will affect things later on, and perhaps those decisions aren't the best they've only been done because someone's been shouting the loudest, rather than this is actually a technical priority that needs to be done right now. Yeah. So, gosh. Yeah, so that you must have changed a whole sort of the atmosphere and the ecosystem around development there.
Very much for this team, among other things. So we'd got to this point where now there was a bit of stability in the team. So we had a clear idea of the scale of the work we had to do.
Yeah.
We were prioritizing it. We were actually getting things moved from one side to the other, and we would get them done. So that was the first step. We actually stabilized. The other advantage that I brought to the team was being a senior developer, but also having a lot of commercial experience. I didn't have a problem turning around and saying no. So a request would come in, and I just turn around and say, no, we're not doing that yet. We've got these things to work on. You'll have to wait. Whereas when you're quite new to your career, quite often you feel it feels awkward turning around and saying, no, I can't do that. You don't want to, because you feel, oh, they're going to think less of me if I turn around and say I can't do that. Whereas, particularly with the project implementation, project management work I've done, people would rather understand that it isn't going to get done and understand the reason why, so they can actually plan themselves and they can make contingencies. And it's always good to go back to, this is something I found and something that's stood me in good stead in all of my career. If you go back to someone and you're going to say no, go back to them with some options. So don't just say, oh, we can't do it. You turn around and say, well, we can't do it because we got to do these. So you're going to have to make a decision on what's important. Or, look, we can't do this, but what we can do is we can do this to mitigate it until we get a chance to do this. So always go back with some options or with some form of dialogue to actually discuss and come up with a consensus as to how you move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I find this with the freelance stuff, because a lot of people want like the moon on the stick, right? So they'll go, oh, I want something that is like super amazing, but I've only got a really small budget. So then what I try and do is sort of map what they really want, but in a sort of a cheaper option, and then sort of lay out a couple of options for them to sort of look at. And then perhaps the super car, the model, the really fast car that they want, we can get there later on, but we can go several steps forward before we get to that point. And half the time, it's like a lot of the requests could actually be scaled down to make my life a little lighter, and also just understanding the client's needs is so important, because they might not be telling you something that is super important because they perhaps don't assume that that's relevant right now. So it's like, what do you want this to do in the next sort of 3 months, because that's going to change my mindset as to how I'm going to develop this now, because I don't want to be coding something and then scrap it 3 months later because you're actually wanting to do something slightly differently. It's the difference between having a gasoline car or an electric car. You want a car, but how do you, what engine do you want?
It does make a bit of a difference when particularly if you put an engine in and they say, well, here's the batteries for it. Hang on.
Hang on a minute. Oh, didn't you know it was supposed to be electric? No, you didn't tell me that.
Well, this was the second phase and the second evolution that the team actually went through. So we got to a point where we had Kanban up and running, and we were starting to prioritize, and things were starting to go a lot better. So at this point, we had an additional developer come on board as well, and we started to have weekly meetings with the other teams, because we were dealing with, there was a Polish team, there was a Greece team, there was a team in America we were dealing with, and one in Ukraine, possibly, I think it may have been. So we had lots of teams around the place where we were having to interface with them. We were basically doing the user portal for this this product, but we had the transaction team. There was another back-end team. They were the project management was being run out of Greece, so it's quite a distributed team. So we then took things forward to the next step, and we actually introduced Scrum as our methodology for working. So we already had the Scrum board because we had a Kanban board. Brilliant. That's an easy iteration to do. We started doing the backlog grooming. We started to do the the other ceremonies, daily stand-ups. We used to have, do the sprint demos, put sprints in place, and then we started to run the project forward like that. And it got to the point where we started to, whereas originally we were, that team never managed to get anything done. We're actually being, started to be held up as an example of how things should be and how things can actually work. So we've managed to turn the team and around from it being, a laughing stock is a bit harsh, but that sort of thing, to being wow, these guys actually can, they're organized. Stuff is done as quickly as I might want, but then I'm a project manager and I want it yesterday anyway. However, they do get stuff done and they actually deliver what they're going to deliver.
So that must have brought up the morale of the team as well. Not only the developers, but also the people who are relying on those developers because they can actually see that the work is, like you said, is getting done. And you mentioned something that I think is just a fantastic point, and that was the evolution of the team, because a team evolves with the methodology and the technology that you put in place, and it certainly does just change the whole dynamic of a team. Now, I mean, what kind of percentage is your role in terms of programming versus management, do you think?
Okay, so back then I would say it was probably about 70-30 in favor of management.
Wow, okay.
Nowadays, it's probably more like 80-20 in favor of management.
80-20,
okay. But my role now is, again, very different from the role I was doing then.
Sure.
I'll kind of lead on to that in a minute. But with the, just sticking with the ePay thing and this whole evolution of the team, the other key fundamental there is that we had a good team in place. We had good developers who were keen to learn. And it sounds like I came in and I changed the dynamic of the team, and it was fantastic. It wasn't just me; it was the entire team. Sure. Everybody was on board with what we were doing. Everybody understood. They wanted to make this work, and it was down to the team. We did that. I mean, you can go into a team, put the best procedures in place that you want, unless you've got a good team working with you and they want to work with and are invested in what you're doing. It's not going to make a blind bit difference.
No, of course not.
So it was a really good team that I was working with, and I really got on well with them.
Well, I mean that kind of change, you're basically shaking the tree, right? So you're like making sure that there's no sort of dead word or anything falling out, or dead leaves falling out. So. And everyone, like you said, needs to be on board and invested. And it sounds like that team was. So
they were very much so.
Let's talk about how that progressed into Torpedo. Is there?
Yeah, sure.
How did that transition go?
Oh, there's a story behind that one.
Yeah,
as well.
I thought there was.
Always a story.
Always a
story.
story.
If you look right now. So the story here is that we'd obviously, like I said, we'd gone back to Germany. So me and my fiance, but my stepdaughter had decided to remain here. She had a nice young lad. She'd grown up in Cheltenham. She'd been here the last 8 years, so she felt that Cheltenham was her home. Right. And she wanted to stay here rather than move back to Germany. Fine, we were quite happy with that. So we'd been there about a year and a half, and then we Skype conversation with her. By the way, I'm pregnant.
No
okay, so we were happy for her. We were quite pleased. I think it was probably a couple of weeks later. There was another Skype conversation. Oh, by the way, it's twins.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so not only am I suddenly going to become a grandfather. I still feel too young to be a grandfather, I got to tell you.
Well, congratulations.
Twins,
wow.
Of all things. So, okay. We were still happy there, and this is when I was working at ePay, and things were going really well. With the leading the team and everything else. So Steph came back to the UK for a holiday after the twins were born. So they'd have been about 6 months at the time.
Right.
She came back to Germany, and I met her at the airport, went back home, and she just burst into tears and said, "We got to move back to the UK." And I was like, "Okay." And she said that obviously she'd been here with the grandchildren. I can't deny that. I mean, it's a more than valid reason for moving back. Yeah. So we moved country again because we're good at doing that.
Wow.
So I then started to look for another position. We obviously this time, I mean, previously when we'd moved back to the UK, we hadn't really had a heart set on any areas in particular.
Okay.
We'd wanted to stay within travelling distance of Bristol because that's where all my family come from. It's where I'm from originally.
Right.
If you start to not be able to understand me, it's because I popped in a bit of Bristol.
Bristolian accent. There you go.
It comes out occasionally.
After a couple of pints, I'm sure.
So this time we knew we wanted to come back to Cheltenham because obviously that's where the grandchildren are and what have you. So I took a job with a cybersecurity company here in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
We moved back, and the role I was back in was pure development again.
So you went straight back to development. Wow.
Straight back to pure development, yeah. So, and it was a bit of a culture shock, I don't mind telling you.
You're right.
So we were working there, and I was working there, I should say, and the 3 months probation, standard thing. Yeah. We got to the end of the 3 months probation, and I just wasn't happy.
No.
I didn't feel right doing a pure development role anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we had discussions with them, and we agreed that it wasn't going to work out. There's nothing they could do to to improve things for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's quite an important thing as well when you have things like probation interviews as well, because in my current role I do a lot of interviews as well. It's as much about making sure that you're a good fit for the candidate, employee, whoever, as they are for your company.
Right.
And that was the discussion we were having at the probation. It was about how that fit was, and it just wasn't working. There were cultural issues and things like that, but I just wasn't happy. I didn't see a way that I could do the job and be happy. Particularly when you get to the point I am in my career, my age. That's a fundamental thing for any position. Yeah. Is very much there's no career building left to do as such.
Right.
It's more I have to be doing something that I get up in the morning and I feel another day.
So what were the main points that were not driving you to continue as development on the development side?
It was a lot of the cultural things, but also I was missing some of the other types of problem solving I was doing. So working out how we're going to do things, trying to get the backlog in shape, actually doing analysis, requirements analysis,
right?
A better understanding of what we were trying to do, and actually be able to direct that to an extent as well. So being able to take a lead in where we were going with the platform and what we were doing, things like that. And it just didn't gel right. Where I was at the time.
So it's like a different problem to solve, or a different set of problems to solve.
It's a different set of problems. It's a different style of problem solving as well. You're not just solving it with code. You're solving it with either architecture. So what infrastructure are we going to use? Who are we going to get to do it? What tooling are we going to use? And all that sort of stuff, and also, to some extent, dealing with the soft skills as well. So dealing with people, mentoring people, trying to lead people, and bring them on. I've always been, wherever I can do, I try and help out, try and mentor, try and bring people's own skill levels up. It's a technique I actually learned off of my stepdad. He's worked for many years in logistics. And he's managing teams and things like that. And his idea of a good team is you can be away for a week and they won't even notice. When you've got your systems down pat that they don't even notice when you're not there, you're doing a good job as a manager.
I love that. In
terms of man management, and to me that is a good measure of success for man management style roles. So if your team can cope without you being there, you're doing it right because you're upskilling them, and that's what it's all about.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So is there anything that you miss from coding?
That's a good question. Do I miss coding? I do still get involved in coding, and I still do some. Like I said, it's about an 80-20. I tend to get involved where we're either bug fixing and stuff like that now.
Right.
So yeah, but my role now as a technical director is a lot more about setting the direction, architecture, making sure we're using the right tooling. It's all of those sort of things.
Right.
So
is it fair to say that's quite a high level sort of look upon the problem?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. So when I left the cybersecurity company, I had obviously updated my CV. It happened to be a Friday that we had the probation meeting on, and that's when I left. And because we were a cybersecurity company, I was on gardening leave.
Right.
So they had to give me a month's notice, but I couldn't work there because I was leaving.
Sure.
It didn't matter about the reason for leaving, but because we did government contracts and things like that, I obviously couldn't remain working there. So I was on garden leave, updated my CV over the weekend, and then Monday morning the calls started coming in from recruiters, and there was a couple of recruiters that I thought were really good because they actually took the time to just chat with me first, understand where I was, what my strengths and weaknesses were, and more importantly, what I was looking for.
Right.
And I was explaining about, I'd done this role in Germany, and I'd come back, done the pure development role, and wasn't really that keen on it. One recruiter in particular had turned around and said, "Well, have you considered going into either a technical management role or a man management role?"
Right.
And it's not something that really, clarified in my head that was, a route to take. I hadn't really considered that because I've always been a developer, so obviously I'm going to look for development roles. And we were talking about that, and there was a light bulb moment. I thought, yeah, actually, that's really probably where I should be focusing more now.
That's really interesting. So a recruitment agent was able to sort of like talk about a particular role that you weren't necessarily aware of.
No, exactly that. He was able to give me, it was very much, he was, saying, well, look, these are other options that are out there that you're obviously not aware of. I've never worked for a marketing agency before.
No.
Very, first time I'd ever gone into that, even considered that sort of industry. And he lined me up with Torpedo Group, which is where I am now. I was lucky enough to be accepted and get the job. And my role very much now is very much to have a kind of a technical oversight, technical overview of the stuff that goes on. So we got some very big clients that we do work for. You can go on the website and you'll be able to see all the people we do. But Autodesk, Adobe, some of the bigger names, Epson as well. And we, as a company, we do the whole range of stuff. So we can do print media, we do landing pages, we do fully fledged websites, we do portals. We even now have some e-commerce stuff we've done as well. So we do the whole range of stuff. And my role within the company as a whole is to any digital projects that come up is to have a bit of an oversight on it, make sure that we're using best techniques, best tools for the job, that we're deploying to the right infrastructure, and all the rest of that sort of stuff. So basically having a very high level oversight, as well as deciding how we're going to resource these jobs, how we're going to get them done on time, making sure that we've got all the requirements we need, mentoring developers as well. So which is why I don't get to do that much coding anymore. And working in Oxford, I don't, by the time I get home, I tend to just want to chill out and relax. So my coding skills probably getting a little bit rusty, but I still keep myself very much up to date with what's going on at a technical level. And I do feel you don't really need to get in the nitty-gritty of the coalface.
Right.
To be able to understand, what direction a project needs to take. I rely on my developers. Again, I'm working with a fantastic team of developers. They're really good. They really know their stuff, and they know their areas very well. So I rely on them quite a bit as to whether we should be using Vue or Angular or React, or whether we should be using Symfony, or should we build this out in WordPress? Should it be Drupal? Or should we just be doing a simple landing page?
I was having a look at the website Torpedo and
Yeah.
Torpedo Group, and yeah, I was blown away by the sheer scale of all the things that they do. It's like you said, it's so varied,
Yes.
both offline and online,
Yeah.
which yeah was awesome. And that level of exposure to different technologies, different requirements, it certainly is great for the experience, and also all of your previous experience as well, that you can bring that to the table as well, which is fantastic. You've got such a very interesting development journey story,
Yeah.
and there's so much involved that I could talk about different things for like hours and hours. Perhaps if you're willing, we can delve into more. Excuse me, in different videos like this, because
Yeah,
I'll be
definitely.
very interested to hear your takes on things like recruitment,
Yep.
and interviewing, because you said that you interview as well.
Yeah.
So how many of those have you done so far?
To date, I've probably done about 15 to 20.
Wow. Okay,
So
gosh.
I do different types of interviews.
Yeah.
So we interview obviously for permanent staff. We're always on the lookout for permanent staff. We have a team of, I think I've got 10 developers at the moment.
Right.
I've got effectively 3 teams that work for me. So 2 development teams, one based in Oxford, one based in London, and I also have a specialised EDM, so electronic mail delivery team.
Right.
Excuse me, because mail is a very specialised area of development.
Right.
Because if you think you've got Outlook, and then you've got Gmail on all your other browser-based ones on your phone, and trying to get a email that will resize nicely across all those devices is such a skill itself. I don't understand half of it.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of very talented developers that do understand all that, which is fantastic. And again, I rely on them a lot to advise me where I need it. They don't need a lot of, well, most of my developers don't need a lot of advice from me, to be honest with you. But I rely on their expertise in their area, and like I said, they're all really good at that. But yeah, certainly it's so permanent staff. I interview, and also freelancers. So we do occasionally use freelancers for bits and pieces. The way we work is, if we do have to bring a contractual freelancer in, we will have them working alongside permanent members of staff, so that they'll come in on bigger projects where we need 2 or 3 developers, and then obviously that way none of the knowledge goes with them, but we can also make sure that they're working in the way we want and to our standard as well.
Very good idea. Yeah.
And I think, to be honest with you, sometimes it can help freelancers as well, because I know from my experience early in my career, I don't know if you find the same, but when you're doing things on your own, in your own way, you'll get into a mindset of doing things a certain way.
Yeah,
and that's
you get very blinkered.
Yes, and then you'll talk to someone else, and they'll be going, "Well, why are you doing that? You can just use this." You're like, "Wow!"
Yeah.
My head's just exploded. And so, working in a team and working with other people, it can really broaden out your understanding. That was my experience when I started with Fastos. Was much that it's like, wow, I didn't know half this stuff existed.
No. Yeah. Me too. It was a proper shock, and one that which has been for the best, because you can take that experience with you. And I think this is a great point to make, is all of these things, all of these jobs that you've done, you are able to sort of take all of that with you to wherever you are at the moment. And I think that is fantastic, because you can get very blinkered, and you can get very sort of like isolated sometimes, especially if I'm a remote developer, so I work from home, and often I don't actually go out and sort of see other developers. But it's when you go and see those other developers, you have to have a sort of a level of transparency, because they need to have eyes on your code, and you need to have eyes on their code, and we share the knowledge, and that knowledge you can take with you. So perhaps not all of the stuff that I do is actually coding, like all of the time. Some of it is actually talking, so just talking about the problem and trying to come up with a solution around that. And you can solve a problem in so many different ways.
Oh yeah.
And different people will attack it from different sort of like directions based on their experience that they can bring as well. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for any upcoming technical directors? Anyone who is thinking that this is where they want to go in their next career move?
You have to be good with people, definitely. Particularly if you're going to manage teams, then you have to have good conflict resolution skills, a good understanding of not necessarily the code itself. So you don't need to be a domain expert in Symfony or something like that.
No.
You do have to understand how these tools work together and how they fit together as well.
Yeah.
And have a real passion for development itself, because a lot of your role is going to be actually trying to get other people into doing following practices or into new technologies or experimenting, messing about, and trying to lead them to get the finished product in. Yeah. But I'd say most of all, your interpersonal skills are going to be key,
right?
Because developers can be an interesting bunch. I've worked with all sorts of developers, and I know the development industry gets a bit of a reputation for having people with things like Asperger's and what have you. And I have to be honest, from my experience, there does seem to be a higher percentage of people who are on the spectrum than some other industries. So understanding how to approach those people, work with them, get the best out of them, and how to help them integrate with the rest of the team in a way that it's cohesive and people work well together is probably a key fundamental. Yeah. So if that's the sort of thing that you enjoy doing, mentoring, helping people along, and making, getting things that work and making things work, it's definitely would be a good career option for you.
That sounds great. Yeah, there's lots of good advice there. Lots of golden advice to give.
And TDD as well.
TDD.
I'm a TDD advocate. Oh, most definitely.
Good man.
Those are good skills, definitely good skills to learn, even if you don't get to practice them commercially. It's something to look into. It makes you think very carefully about how you write code and how you structure things.
Right.
It can help prevent a lot of problems up front.
Yeah. Often I find
on that.
Yeah. Often I find that if I can't test something because perhaps it's so coupled to something else, then that's often an indication of a code smell that you have to sort of like look at. It's a different, like I said, it's a completely different mindset, and it's a great subject to talk about. We could talk about it in far more depth. But I mean, your development journey has been so interesting and has changed and evolved, and you've adapted as well. Not only your technical skills, but your people skills, and also your general life. You've had to adapt to that because, like you said, you were thrown a curveball and you had to adapt and sort of adjust your career to base yourself close to your family, which is and these are things that you just can't predict.
No. Yeah. So, I found it best never to plan too far ahead with either, career or anything at all.
Yeah.
Life will throw something at you. Yeah. You do definitely need to be adaptable.
Yeah.
But I think it's made me, the person I am now. I've got the advantage. I've got a lot of commercial experience as well. So I've not just been involved in development, but I've been involved in accounts. I can read a balance sheet, I can read a profit and loss sheet. I've been involved in the management side of it, the project implementation, project management. I've been involved in different industries as well. So there's been the e-commerce, there's been the financial services side of things. The ideation, that was a very different experience as well. And that's all stuff I've been able to build on. Like you said, I can bring to it. The advantage now as well is, it's quite easy to get behind the ideas of clients and things like that, because I've got some idea about different industries. So I'm not so well, this is how you do it in mail order.
Yeah, of course.
I don't have that anymore. It's like, well, this is how some businesses do it. This is how other ones do, and you can start to have more empathy for different industry types and things like that.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you ever so much, Jeremy. We'll leave it there because we're moving on to sort of 50 minutes, but I could talk about all of these things with you for hours and hours. So hopefully, if you're willing, we'll have you on again, and we'll talk about the different areas that you've not only worked with, but also the the interviewing side, the recruitment side as well, because that is so fascinating. And but thank you ever so much for coming on board. It's been great.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's great. So if anybody wants to get hold of you, have you got any sort of contact, Twitter handle or any links that you want to shout out to before we go?
I do have a Twitter handle. I have no idea what it is because I use people rather than actually doing it. My Twitter handle is, I believe it's at Balfour74.
Right.
But I'll give you some links that you can add to the show notes.
No worries. And I'll put a link down to Torpedo as well. And all of that. But thank you ever so much again, Jeremy, and happy coding, everyone. I hope everybody has a great week. Thanks again. Cheers. Bye.